Hey guys, I am excited to get started today, and I actually want to show you first that we're skipping quite a bit because we want to get straight to what we want to start today. So this should be your first lesson of the week, and I want you to notice that I crossed out two different things. So first of all, last week when I recorded my last video, I told you we were going to finish up 8-2 on Monday, but I don't want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and skip that. It's too hard to do this from home to use a protractor, and you have a million more opportunities to use protractors in your life. So I feel totally fine to skip that for now. 8-3 is about measuring circles, which is no longer a fourth grade standard. Nothing you'll need to worry about in fourth grade anymore, but triangles is a big one. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on here. So if you'll make sure that you're in your 8-4 SAB, that would be really cool. And while you're flipping to that, I want to tell you just a little bit of information about angles and triangles and things like that. So you know a triangle is a three-sided shape, but something that you might not know, and now you've been using a protractor a little bit, or at least saw me using a protractor a little bit. Oh geez, that was funny. One thing to know about a triangle is that it actually has three angles. Tri means three, so that makes sense. And no matter what way your triangle is drawn, no matter what you do to it, it is always going to be 180 degrees when you measure out its three different angles. So this angle plus this angle plus this angle is always going to equal 180 degrees. It's just the properties of a triangle. And actually, if you think about it, a square or a circle, or sorry, well, actually a circle, a square or a rectangle has 360 degrees. And half of 360 is 180. And check this out. If I just cut this rectangle in half, I now have two different triangles that equal 180 each. So altogether, a triangle equals 180 degrees. You're not going to totally need to know that, but it's going to help you with something that I'm just about to show you. So over here off to the left, it says the prefix tri means three, like I just said. So it's easy to remember that a triangle has three angles. Triangles can take their names from the kind of angles they have. So you're basically going to be learning today different ways to describe a triangle. We don't want to just call it a triangle because triangles can look so different. So here it's showing you a right triangle, an obtuse triangle, and an acute triangle. And they've drawn you an example of all three of those. And now I just want to go into a little bit more detail. So a right triangle has one right angle, which we show by drawing a small little square at the right angle. So I mentioned this to you the other day. Whenever you're talking right angles, you want to have like a piece of paper or like a post-it note, something that's got a square corner, or in fact more than one square corner. And these are going to be really helpful to you because they're perfect testers. I call it a right angle tester to see whether or not a triangle has more or less than 90 degrees. So for example, if I were to take mine, I'll just draw, oh, that's a circle. If I were to take mine and draw a little 90-degree angle here, and I were to drag this guy over, you can see that when I place it on top, it fits perfectly, so that shows me that it's a 90-degree angle. But if I were to do this same one, I'm going to have to tilt it, I think, a little bit, and I were to place it on this guy, and I'll keep tilting it so it's perfect. If I were to put it right here on this angle, it's definitely not 90 degrees, so this angle right here would be acute. But then if I were to try and place it on this angle, it's hard to do, it's funny. If I were to place it on this angle, I can very clearly see that it's more than 90 degrees. So this would be 180, or this, sorry, not 180, this would be an obtuse angle, okay? So the reason that I wanted to show you that is because these names are super important, and you have to make sure that you name them correctly. And back to what it says over here, where it says a right triangle has one right angle, but an obtuse triangle has one obtuse angle. A right triangle has one right angle, but then an acute triangle is kind of different. It's got three acute angles, and all three of them have to be acute. Because here's something that I want you to notice. A right triangle here has a 90-degree angle, but then it's also got two acute angles. And this triangle right here has one big fat obtuse angle, but then it's got two little tiny acute angles all together. So if I think about that, this one has one 90-degree angle and two acute angles. This one has one obtuse angle and two acute angles, but this one altogether has 3 acute angles. So those are going to be important to know. An acute triangle has 3 acute angles. An obtuse triangle has just 1. It only takes 1. And then a right triangle has 1 right angle. So down here, number 1 says you can use letters to write and talk about triangles. This triangle is QRS. Name its 3 angles and their type. So this is definitely a right triangle because it's got that little square corner in there. And also, if you had used a piece of paper to test it, you would clearly see that it's a right triangle. And then we're going to call this by its name. And we can actually name its 3 different angles. So we're going to have our right triangle all together. But then I want to name its 3 angles. So one angle is if I go Q to R to S. QRS, that is going to be my right angle. Okay, that's where that right angle lands. Remember last week we talked about whichever letter is in the middle is what the angle is you're talking about. But I have 2 other angles that I can talk about here. What if I went R to S to Q? So if I went R to S to Q, think about that right here. That's this shape right here, and you're talking about that angle, which is definitely acute because it's really small. And then the last one is if you went angle, Q, Q is the one that I want to be in the middle. So what if I did S to Q to R? So that means I would be talking about that angle right there, S to Q to R. That right there is also going to be an acute angle. So we mentioned earlier that if we had 1 right angle, at least, then it's going to automatically be called a right triangle. Today's just a day for you to soak this information in, guys, so don't stress too much, okay? Number 2 says, it says what kind of triangle, how do we know? We talked about all of that, so don't even worry about that, okay? And then here it wants you to draw and label a right triangle, an acute triangle, and an obtuse triangle. The only reason I'm going to have you skip this one right now is because of time. You could always come back and finish this one later if you'd like. But for now, I want you to actually come over here to number 4, and I'm going to draw, I'm going to use my little right angle tester here. So I'm going to draw one, and I'm not going to use it for everything, but I'm going to use it from time to time. So if I'm trying to name these triangles by their angle, I'm going to circle the word angle here. If I'm trying to name it by its angle, it's going to have one of 3 names. It's either going to be a right triangle, it's going to be an obtuse triangle, or it's going to be a acute triangle. Okay, so again, if it's a right triangle, it's got that perfect 90-degree angle. If it's an obtuse triangle, it's got more than a 90-degree angle. And if it's an acute triangle, it's got less than a 90-degree angle. And it's got 3 of those. So we got to look for those around here. So I'm going to drag my square off to this one. And you'll notice I just sort of match it up along one of its long edges. And what I want to look for here is I want to see if this angle is more, less than, or equal to 90 degrees. And I can tell that this one's less than. But if you'll remember, you have to check all 3 angles. So on this one, I also need to now sort of rotate my triangle. And now I'm going to line it up here with this angle up here. And again, that's still less than 90 degrees. And then this last one I'm going to test is down here. And you can see that that's also definitely less than 90 degrees. So that means I have officially named this triangle, and it is an acute triangle. So we can write down acute triangle. We don't normally write down triangle, but I'll save you a little bit of time here. And then it says, explain your thinking. Here's all I want you to do. There were 3 acute angles. We're going to write it just like that. Okay, that's going to be our evidence to show. Now on number 5, they have made life very easy for me because look at this little guy right here. This automatically tells me that this is a right triangle. And the way that I know that that's true is because it has 1 right angle. Okay, that doesn't look like an angle sign. There you go. Okay, number 6, just by looking at it, I think it's acute, but we don't want to just look, we want to actually test. So I'm going to fix my little 90-degree tester here. There we go. And now I'm going to drag it over. Again, you want to flatten it up against one of the sides. And if I'm testing this angle right here, it's less than 90 degrees for sure. Now I'm going to test this other one over here, and this angle, oops, where'd you go? This angle right here, is definitely less than 90 degrees. And now I only need to test this one at the top, which will be, I mean, to me it seems pretty obvious. Hopefully it does for you too. But if I were to drag this, definitely less than 90 degrees. So that tells me that this one is once again an acute triangle. And the reason we know it is because it has 3 acute angles. So just by looking at number 7 through 9, does anybody see one right away that you already know the name for? Hopefully you saw number 8 right away. I can already tell that that's a right triangle because it has that 90-degree angle, or what we call a right angle. So I want you to look at number 7. I automatically think that number 7 is obtuse, and the reason I do is because look at how big this angle right here looks. So this is the first one that I'm going to test. Well, that actually is pretty perfect. So if you can see this, I am trying to test this angle to see where it matches up over here. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. How it matches up over here to this other side. And do you see how this yellow doesn't stop going until after? That shows me that this is an acute, or sorry, nope, wrong name. This is an obtuse angle. And so because of that, we would call this an obtuse triangle. I don't even have to test the others because all it takes to be obtuse is one obtuse angle. So I'm going to drag that now over to here. Okay, so then number 9 is the other one I want to test. I'll do that kind of fast. Number 9 is, my guess is that it's an acute, or sorry, gosh, I keep saying that wrong. I hope I'm not confusing you guys. I apologize. I also think number 9 is obtuse. And the reason I do is because if I'm testing this angle right here from this bottom line over to this top, this right line to the right, do you see how it goes over that? So that shows me that it is more than 90 degrees, which means that I would label it as an obtuse triangle because it has at least one obtuse angle. Okay. These are ones that you can do on your own time today. This would be really good practice. In fact, I'm going to encourage you to do so. But I want to see how far I can get through this. I'm not going to rush through it, but I've got about 2 more minutes of video, and I want to at least start you on this path because this is kind of interesting stuff. So another way that we can actually describe a triangle is by its sides. So we already did the angle names, which was right, obtuse, and acute. But now we can talk about the sides of a triangle, and there are 3 new words that you're going to learn today. You're going to learn equilateral, isosceles, and scalene. Here's the deal. There's not really a perfect way to sort of help you remember these. You kind of have to just practice it and they'll sink in. Equilateral is definitely the easiest, so I'm going to start there. An equilateral triangle has 3 equal sides. It's right there with equilateral. It kind of looks like the word equal. So if I were to draw a triangle, like for example this one right here, if I were to measure this side and it was 3 centimeters, this side would also be 3 centimeters, and this side would also be 3 centimeters. Okay? So then for an isosceles one is a little different. It doesn't have 3 equal sides. It actually has 2 equal sides. So an isosceles, what I sometimes remember is that these 2 S's right here kind of seem like they're 2 sides of a triangle. I don't know why, it just works in my brain a little bit. But an isosceles triangle, it has 2 sides that are exactly the same. So if I were to measure this side and it was 7 centimeters, this side would automatically be 7 centimeters. Okay, and then the last one is scalene, and scalene basically means I follow no directions. You can't tell me what to do. Okay, that's all the time I have for today. I'm going to finish up the rest of that later. Here's where I'm going to give you your options to work. One option, I don't know why that says 8-2, is to finish up a couple of those problems that I just mentioned for 8-4. That was problems number 9 through 16. You could go back and do those. Or the other one is you could try to check out the weekly plan for IXLs, but be careful because this IXL plan is probably going to have all the pages that I've indicated for 8-4, and some of those you're not ready for yet. So this is probably what I would recommend you get started on today, but it's also okay if you want to try out IXL. So good luck.